like it was unnaturally loud and clear, the sound that the pickaxe made when it hit the bodies.
I'm in your camp with this, Russ.
And I don't know why that made me notice it, but it seemed like it was Foley. It just seemed very pulled out.
Well, audio done right does not draw your attention. Audio done incorrectly makes you go, wait a minute, did you hear that? What was that? Why did that sound fake? And I think that was part of what was going on here.
Yeah, I think they could have just damped that down a little bit, and I think it would have been all right. And I don't know if they were trying to overdo the effect, but to me, it just kind of took me out a little bit. It made me, this is going to sound silly, but it just made me, that much clearer that I'm watching a TV show.
Well, the first couple of times I heard that, I actually cringed like, ooh, that's gross. And then it almost became humorous.
Yeah.
Well, I thought that was a great reaction shot, though, from Norman Reedus' character, as she does it. Like Jordan said in his recap, he even kind of is stunned by her ferocity.
Yeah, he underplayed it. It was nice. It wasn't over the top or anything. Russ, you had 2 problems with the scenes, right? Oh, sorry, Brad.
I think she underplayed it because I expected her to really kind of go psycho with the pickaxe, but she seemed a little bit too calm. Yes, she took repeated strikes at his noggin, but I really didn't see any anger in her, or as much as I expected. So I really kind of expected her to ham it up a bit, but she didn't.
So we then rejoin Andrea and Amy, and Andrea realizes that Amy is reanimating. And at this point, Andrea takes some time to clear up those issues she discussed with Dale, and she says to Amy that she's sorry for never being there. I always thought there would be more time. It's a very moving scene, and one of the best reanimation scenes I've ever seen in a zombie context. And I'd like to take this point to say I take back my complaints about Emma Bell from last episode, who plays Amy. Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of her work on the boat, but I think she really nailed this scene as a zombie, so I give it up to her there.
I gotta agree with you, Jordan. That was a really amazing scene. I was like, I wonder how, as an actor, how many times do you get the chance to actually portray a zombie or reanimation from human to zombie? Probably not that many, but she did great with it. It was totally believable. It was slow, it was gradual, and as she started to wake up, you kind of got the feeling that there was still a little bit of her humanity possibly still there as she reached up to touch her sister's face. But then you saw those fingers grab on that hair and start to pull her down, take a chunk out of her. It was just really well done.
Mm-hmm.
So where does this put our time frame at from death to reanimation? About 12 hours?
It was
probably.
Yeah, it was dark, and then it was like, I'd say anywhere from like Jordan 8 to 12. That's probably a good guesstimation.
This is where we get to the other problem I had with the show. And again, this is very, very minor. Overall, I think they did an outstanding job, and I love the fact that she stayed with her until reanimation, and then what she did. The only thing I have to say in the negative is I think it was just a little too much. And it went, when you look at it from how much screen time they chewed up with the two of them between the end of the last episode and then all they did with this episode, given the short 6-episode season, I think they chewed a lot of screen time with those two and Amy being dead. I get it. And I think the actors in those scenes did an outstanding job. And I think, I have no complaints about the performance. I just think they might have been able to kind of chop it a little bit and compress it to get more of the story in and the other characters in. So that's my minor nitpick.
I disagree with you there, Russ. I think it's moments like this that are what make The Walking Dead comic book TV show. I think this is stuff you don't want to compress. This is the stuff you want to have there. And if you have to cut out 2 or 3 minutes of people running around shooting things, that's the right decision. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, and it's a tough deal because you're right. I mean, that is what makes The Walking Dead. And maybe if you do chop that out too much, then people don't get a real feel for it. I just think that's what hurts a 6-episode run. And maybe I don't know what the solution that to I really wish this would be more like a and I'm sure AMC is probably wishing it at this point given the ratings, more like what TNT or USA or Sci-Fi does with where they do like half seasons. So you still get like a full 22 episodes, but you get it like a 10 episode and a 12 episode or an 11 and 11 or 10 and 10 or whatever, where they split it up in 6 months apart. So they'll do like the winter stuff and then they'll do like a summer thing. So still in a 1-year time frame you get a full season, but that may have mitigated some of that.
So as we touched on before, Amy, as she's reanimating, tries to bite Andrea, but Andrea, after she said her piece and kind of she's come to terms with the situation, she shoots her in the head after saying that she loves her. So we then cut to Rick and Shane burning the bodies, and Shane blames Rick for the attack. He says that Rick took half their manpower with him to Atlanta, and had they been there, the attack might not have been so bad. But Rick says if they hadn't gotten the guns, maybe no one would have survived. At that point, Daryl comes over and says they should have burned the bodies and not buried them. So people all over the place are angry. He says these people need to know who's in charge and what the rules are. But Lori responds and says that they need to hold onto the ritual of burial and mourning because it's what people do.
This is more that alpha male struggle that we talked about a couple shows ago. You can even throw Daryl into the mix with Shane and Rick.
Yeah, I don't think Daryl would want to be the top dog, though. I think he's comfortable following somebody and just being the muscle.
Yeah. This whole thing is very interesting. I mean, you have Lori. Does she really believe? Does she really side with Rick, or does she just not want to side with Shane at this point? You know what I mean? It's a whole interesting. The way the personalities are playing off each other right now. It's very interesting.
I really like the way the burial kind of is very, very representative of them clinging on to civilization and normalcy and something that they still believe in that kind of separates them from the zombies. You know what I mean? Like the ritual of burial, burying their dead, burying the people from their parties who they knew who had died, as opposed to burning the anonymous zombies. I mean, really, it just speaks to them. Like Lori keeps trying to cling on to some sort of normalcy and safe. Like that scene with Carl, when he looks up at Rick and says, "Are we safe?" It's kind of just them clinging on to like these last vestiges of what their lives were before.
And it recalls episode 2, Guts, where they have the body of Wayne Dunlop as well. They don't want to forget their humanity and just go full bore ahead.
And it's such an ironic way to cling on to your humanity in a zombie apocalypse because the dead are what's going to get you. So hanging around with the dead and trying to do the right thing and bury them and handling them and stuff, it's just like got bad written all over it.
Mm-hmm. We then get a quick scene of Jim in the camper, and he's starting to go delirious, and he's having visions of zombies and quick cuts. So while we're in with the trailer with Jim, I should point out, again, talking about American flags, here we have an upside-down American flag right next to him, an upside-down flag, of course, being an international signal for distress, which Jim is clearly in, as is the entire group. But so once again a American flag faded upside down to bookend with our bloody American flag t-shirt. We then cut back to Andrea and Dale burying Amy as the camp mourns. And Rick asks if Lori blames him for not being there like Shane does when there was a zombie attack last episode. She says that neither of them is entirely wrong. And then they discuss the CDC trip. She asks him to tell her something that he's certain of, and he says, "I love you, and that's all I've got." And she replies, "I love you too." I thought it was a nice scene between the two of them.
Yeah.
So then we go back to Jim the camper, and this time Carol is tending to Jim. Rick and Lori come by to talk to him, and Rick tells Jim about their CDC plan. And Jim says, "That sound you hear? That's God laughing while you make plans." Then Jim starts to go a little bit crazy, and he talks about mangroves, the boat, Amy, and the mangroves cutting through the boat. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, although I'm sure there's lots of metaphor there.
Yeah, see, I had a problem understanding what Jim was saying in this section, and I actually rewound it a few times and tried to listen to what he was saying. I either was confused because it didn't make sense, or I literally could not tell what he was saying.
Yeah, I watched it a few times too. I think they're just trying to show how out of it he was, but I do think they also tried to throw some. It was like the mangroves he's talking about, and he's like, the roots are going to tear through the boat. Oh, I can see it now. There's Amy, she's swimming, and you'll watch the boat, won't you? Won't you, Rick? You got to keep watching the boat. So yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm sure mangroves represent something, boats represent something, but I can tell you what. Shane goes to Lori to ask her to talk some sense into Rick about the CDC. Lori tells Rick she trusts his gut. At this point, Rick and Shane go for a walk in the woods with guns to do a zombie sweep, and so you already have a bad feeling in your stomach. Shane says to think of his family, or Shane tells Rick to think of his family, and that the CDC trip is too dangerous, but Rick says it's the safest move all around. And they get into a bit of an argument. Shane says he was the one who kept Lori and Carl safe, and Rick says he knows he can never repay that debt. And Shane is quickly getting paranoid. So they hear a noise off in the woods, and Rick goes off in one direction to investigate, and Shane goes in another. Shane brings up Rick in his sights. He gets a really weird look on his face, and he almost shoots Rick, but he thinks better of it. And then we see that Dale saw the whole thing. Shane plays it off as an accident, but Dale does not seem to bite.
We see some really good acting in this episode, like I said before, the Norman Reedus reaction to the skull splitting, and here again with Jeffrey Demuth with his reaction to seeing Shane looking down the barrel of a shotgun at Rick just across the field. I mean, he knows what's going on. There's no, I mean, just from that expression on his face, you can tell he's not only does he see the whole thing, but he knows what's going on.
Dale's looking, and all he says was, "Jesus." You know, it's like, really? You can't be serious. You're actually considering doing that. And that's it at all. Just the one word.
Yeah, definitely. So then we cut back to the camp, and Shane has, I'm going to say out of guilt, but I don't really know for sure, he has a change of heart, and he tells the group that he's decided to follow Rick's plan. They need to stay together, and they're going to leave the first thing in the morning. So we then have a scene that mirrors the opening of the episode, and Rick tries to radio Morgan again to tell them to leave him for the CDC, and he says they're going to leave a note and a map behind for him. Morales, Miranda, and their children. We saw Morales in episode 2. We haven't really seen the others too much, but they've been around. They tell the group that they've decided to split, and they're going to go to her family in Birmingham. So Rick and Shane give them a 357 and some rounds. At this point, the whole group, from two different directions, go off into the open road. They leave the Challenger and a note and a map taped to it for Morgan.
To me, the whole going to the CDC thing made a lot of sense. I mean, I guess you can make the argument that an army base might be a better choice, but we saw, between downtown Atlanta, between the hospital, that it seemed like the military was kind of overrun. And just from my thinking, the CDC is probably like almost an impenetrable fortress. If it's meant to keep germs either in or out, it's got to be pretty locked tight. And if you already got weapons and stuff, and they may have answers, they may have an antidote, they may have a cure, like Rick is thinking. I still think that's the smarter play. I mean, if worst case you go there, and if it's a bust, then you make it to the fort.
Yeah, we're going to get into it a lot more at the end of the episode. We've got some voicemails and an interview with Robert Kirkman himself, but yeah, I don't know if people realize this or not, because I don't know if I was fully aware of it. But when we say the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, that's not a generic term. Like, okay, in Atlanta there's a CDC, and in Washington D.C. there's a CDC, and in New York there's a CDC. In Atlanta is the capital T, capital H, capital E Center for Disease Control. It is the center of disease control for the United States of America. So it would make sense for them to go there.
But I thought it was great that it brought tension between Rick, Shane, and Lori as to who's going to be on what side and who had the better argument and all that. And that whole bit with Shane and the shotgun in the woods and everything was, to me, that was like, okay, this is The Walking Dead. To me, it put everything to rest about the and whether they could take what we know of the graphic novel and translate it into the TV show. That was like, okay, they've got it down perfect in my book.
So the group goes off onto the road, and this is where we have some of the, I'm going to call it the most standard music we've had in the show so far, but I'll say just kind of the most generic music. It was good, but it felt like any other TV show. And it was very loud, which was odd for this particular program. So the camper overheats. As Dale says, at this point, it's more duct tape than hose, and he's all out of duct tape. Jim's about to die, and Rick goes to see him, and Jim asks Rick to leave him behind. He says he wants to be with his family. So Dale wants what Jim wants, Lori agrees, everyone kind of finally comes to terms with it, and they leave Jim leaning up against a tree. Jim refuses the gun offered by Rick. They all bid Jim goodbye, and they return to the convoy.
Now, somebody who has a better memory than I, refresh me. In the book, didn't he take the gun from Rick, and Rick leave him with the gun with like a bullet in it?
I thought he left him a fully loaded weapon.
I think
I
he did, Jim.
thought it was pretty, because I thought in the book he left him a gun, and in the show here he refuses the gun. And other than that, I thought it was very close to what we saw in the book with the end of Jim's character.
Yeah. I mean, not to spoil the book, but I think there was a better reason for him to leave him with a weapon, or for Jim to want a weapon when they left him.
Speaking of things that are in the comic, the next section definitely isn't. It was a bit of a jarring experience, but I don't think necessarily a bad one. When we come back from commercial and we're introduced to a character named Jenner, and he's talking into a camera, he says it's been 194 days since wildfire was declared, and 63 days since it abruptly went global. We see him get into a biosuit and go into a clean room where he's working on some tissue samples, including one called TS19. So he's running tests, and he's very tired. Apparently he hasn't been sleeping well because he doesn't know whether to stay or night because he's underground. He gets some of the corrosive material he's working with onto his biosuit, and it corrodes right through the gloves of his hands. So he goes to the emergency wash station. The lab goes into full decontamination mode and explodes. He's still alive though, but he's lost his freshest samples. Everything else is necrotic. He doesn't know if anyone else is watching his transmissions. He says, tomorrow I think I'm going to blow my brains out. I have decided. But tonight, I'm getting drunk. And he's the only one in a giant CDC room. And my thoughts definitely were that it was a very Desmond in the Hatch feel from Lost.
Yeah.
I totally thought all of a sudden, I was like, when did I ever? I must have missed this episode of Lost when it came on.
He even looks like Clancy Brown, who played Kelvin Inman, who was also in Hatch before Desmond was there. So it's kind of a funny coincidence.
I also thought of.
I didn't think he looked a thing like Clancy Brown.
Oh, I think he did.
Then I'm wrong.
Not like identical twins, but similar enough to make you double take.
Like maybe second or third cousins?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was a bad joke.
What was I going to say? Oh, when he was throwing the wine bottle, it reminded me of Will Smith in I Am Legend when he's hitting the golf balls off like the aircraft carrier just because he can.
Yeah, definitely. And it should be noted that tissue sample, now granted, there's a bit of contention here whether it's tissue sample 19 or test subject 19, but whichever one it is, the next episode of the show is called TS19, so I'm assuming we're going to be touching on that quite a bit next hour.
One thing I'd like to throw in also, we have a good friend of ours, Lynn, who is Ducky is Lost on the Twitter. She said that this was very similar to the Andromeda strain.
Yes, it is actually.
Yes.
The original movie, anyway. I didn't see the remake that A&E got a few years ago, but the original.
The remake was pretty terrible.
Yeah, you did yourself a service.
Good, I'm glad.
By the way, do you know
I remember
who?
seeing the original as a pretty young kid on TV, and it kind of blew my mind out. And now in the 80s, we were already all afraid of nuclear bombs, but now we had to be afraid of germ outbreaks as well. It was a really creepy, claustrophobic movie, but it was very much like this. They were in an underground bunker, sealed off. A disease had affected most of the population of Earth, and they were sealed, and the whole thing started just because of one simple spill and mistake, very much like what happens to Jenner in this episode.
So as the Twitter conversation was sparked by Lynn, and I told her that I wasn't familiar with it, could she explain how it was similar? And then I guess she started looking things up as she was explaining, and guess who the executive producer of the Andromeda Strain miniseries was? She says it came out in 2008.
Yeah, that was the sci-fi version, I think.
Frank Darabont.
Really?
So there's your connection.
The original movie, which is based on, it's all based on a book by Michael Crichton, but the original movie is quite well known because of animal cruelty. There's a scene where it's supposed to be that I think a chimp or a monkey of some type is infected with the Andromeda strain and dies in a room, and the way they filmed that was by sucking all the oxygen out of the room while filming.
The 70s weren't very kind to animals. Between Patton and this one and The Godfather, it was
Animals or haircuts, by the way. Haircuts are pretty bad too.
I'll take your pick.
I love me some 70s prog rock, though. That was a plus.
Oh, and one other thing, just real quick, since the getting on the Andromeda Strain connection, the team that was assembled to deal with the outbreak was called the Wildfire Team. That was put together of these scientists of various backgrounds to go into this facility. Which again, in this, the episode's called Wildfire, and I think they refer to it as a wildfire incident or wildfire outbreak. So,
if I had to guess, I would think that that's probably an established real world term for such a breakout.
I thought so because I swear that I've heard that before outside the Andromeda Strain in this episode. And I did some digging on. I did Google search, I did Wikipedia, and the only references to wildfire I find are the traditional forest fire inferences to wildfire. That it literally refers to a large grass fire.
Or a really bad 70s song by Michael Murphy.
There you go.
Did you say bad song? Don't make me sing that song to you, Jim.
Please don't.
So our camp gets to the roadblock outside the CDC. They hoof it through tons of dead bodies. I'd probably say there's as many dead body extras here as there were zombie extras in the pilot.
What did you guys think about the effect of the flies? I mean, because as they come in, they're trying to be quiet and kind of hurry single file. But they had I guess they were digitally added later. It seemed like they have an immense amount of flies and a lot of the sound of flies swarming. I know you're talking about Foley's before. What did you guys think about that effect?
This one didn't stand out as much just because of the volume that there's so many. I just thought it would add to the creepy factor that these people have been out there for a while. And again, to compare and contrast with the comic, I think these moments in the TV show are better portray why it really works as a live action deal to really get the sense of how nasty things are at times with the printed page. Whereas in a moving video and in film, you can really bring it to the audience that some time has definitely passed and things are starting to decompose and get really ugly.
I had a hard time figuring out where all these people came from. I mean, were they walkers to begin with? I kind of assumed they were, and then the military killed them, or snipers from inside the CDC building before he got run over. Did they shoot all these people? I mean, obviously they've been there a long time and they're not near as fresh as the walkers downtown, but it just really wasn't clear to me where all these bodies came from.
If I had to guess, I think you're right, but they'll probably touch on it more next episode.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
I think a lot of them were in military outfits, or some of them at least were. So I think it could be a combination too of people that were fighting, people that were already walkers, and then others that became walkers.
They were probably told to. I was guessing they ordered to defend the CDC at all costs. Probably mostly from walkers, but.
So as they're walking through the dead bodies, buzzers go off inside Jenner's office, and he turns on the cameras and he sees our group outside. So there's lots of arguing outside because Jenner's not acknowledging that they're there. But Shane wants to go for Fort Benning. Zombies are approaching, so they have to start shooting them. Everyone's freaking out, and Rick sees the camera move. Jenner's talking to himself and he just wants everyone to go away, but Rick pleads for anyone to open the door. He says, we have children, we have women, we have no food, we have almost no gas. You are killing us. And Shane pulls Rick back just as the shutters open, and a bright light, very much a la the series finale of Lost, emerges. And that ends our episode.
Or Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I mean, if you really want to go back to the whole door opening with the bright light, it's so bright you can't see who's there.
Well, yeah, it's so totally more that, and it's not at all like Lost. And Jordan only has a frame of reference that is half as long as yours or mine, Jim. So, when were you born, Jordan?
I was born in 1987.
See,
So
Jim, he never saw Close Encounters, the way we did. So, but yeah, I totally thought Close Encounters when I saw that. That was just really, really cool visual.
What do you guys think of Jenner not wanting them there, telling them to just go away? You think he's afraid of them using up his supplies if they come in, or why wouldn't he want more living people with him?
Well, he had just kind of decided to kill himself. So why, we fear change. We don't like it when our schedules are messed up.
Plus, he's probably afraid of infection.
Yeah, it could be a lot of things. I mean, it could be infection. It could be he's used to being on his own. It could be he's a little crazy. It could be that he doesn't want them to find out that something that happened there may have started this whole thing, or that they may know or have a hand in it, and that may bode poorly for him. Hard to say.
But likely we'll touch on it next episode, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I thought that ending's incredible. I mean, just the way that Rick was just so desperate and everybody was pulling him away and they were like, okay, we tried it your way, now we're screwed. It's getting dark. We've got to get the hell out of here. Enough. No more. And Rick being so defiant and so convinced that there's somebody in there and that he could get through to that person or those people to get help. And then when it finally paid off at the end when that door opened up and that bright light hit, I just thought that was just an excellent piece of of cinematography. I mean, whoever the set designer was and whoever was shooting that sequence did just an outstanding job. And I thought it was a great way to end the episode, and definitely leave you wanting more for the finale.
Do we want to go around and do some ratings?
I will probably give this one a 4.5. I enjoyed pretty much everything about it, but it was a little bit slow in parts.
I will give this one 5 busters. I know I had a couple little nitpicks on it, but that wasn't. I think the payoffs were well worth it, even with the nitpicks. And to me, this was just as good as the pilot. I mean, this again proved to me that they've done a stellar job translating this book that we've all been so enamored with for such a long time, and that they could move off the beaten path into something completely different and it still work. So 5 for me.
I'd have to say 4.5 out of 5 busters for me. This was probably my favorite episode since the premiere. The tension-filled scenes with Andrea and Amy at the very end, with Rick trying to get the guy Jonah to open the door to the CDC. The tension was really great there. Scene with Jim was awesome. We saw some really good acting from pretty much all the entire cast. So 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm going to give it somewhere between 4 and 4.5 for all the things Jim just said. Lots of cool scenes together, lots of good acting. I like the zombie action. I wish there was a little bit more of it. And, might have given it a strong 4.5 at that point. But I really, really did enjoy it, and I really like this whole CDC plotline that's new to all of us.
I'm going to go 3.75. I'm not going to give it a 4 because I don't want to tie it with other episodes that I liked better than it. But I liked it better than the 3.5, which I gave Guts. So 3.75, a little slow for me. I didn't really care about Jim, which hurt that whole scene a little bit. I was hoping for a little bit more. Disappointed that we haven't seen Merle yet. I know that's going to pay off somewhere down the road, but I didn't like the way it wasn't addressed at all. But still very good. I don't have any problem with the CDC angle. Again, I like that they're going in a different direction in the comic. I don't want to know exactly what's happening. And at this point, I think it's safe to say that we have no idea what's going on. So that's cool. All right, so with that, we're going to go right to our Tweeting Dead segment. And we'll get some Buster ratings from our Twitter friends. Alan, 0 fights. Geeky Science for the win, 5 out of 5. Thank you for that. We got Aaron's PS3. Had a lot of very good individual scenes. Not sure about it as a whole yet. 3.5 Busters. Gendive says, amazing episode, 5 busters. Glenn needed a hug, and poor Jim, I was digging him as much as I dislike Shane. She also says in a second tweet, where is Merle, in all caps? And we know what all caps means. She's definitely means business. Loki Beat says there was a definite wow moment or two in it, some expected, some not. It's departed so much from the comic, it stands alone. Ducky is lost, that's Lynn again, gave it 4.8 pickaxes. Andrea and Amy were heartbreaking, as was Jim. I'm loving Dale. Shane, not so much. Girl of Mayhem, great episode, excited for the finale, 4.5 busters. Luthen, 4 busters. The Andrea and Jim scenes felt right out of the comic. Love Daryl. Shane and Laurie, not so much. Glad Dale caught Shane. A couple more quick ones. Let's see. Brad. That's Brad ZB, 4.3 busters. Loved Ed's wife going to town on his melon. And Harley Big Daddy, 4.9 busters. Really good human episode. So thanks a lot to everybody on the Twitter. We're having a lot of fun. And hang in there because we're going to be reading our Twitter contest winner in a little bit. Rust, do we have an email that we can get to?
We do. We have one from Aaron. And he says, hey, dude, Aaron from Laguna Hills. Some thoughts on this week's episode, Wildfire, or those really dirty, sweaty people leave the camp. I gave an initial thought on Twitter last night where I stated that I thought this episode had a lot of very good sequences. I stand by those thoughts. Moments such as Andrea taking out Amy, despite being a pretty close range gunshot, with almost no reaction from Andrea as far as her hearing would go. Shane taking aim at Rick and clearly becoming more unhinged as a character, followed by Dale's awesome response, Jesus, and the way the group says goodbye to Jim were all solid and well handled. However, having the group say goodbye to the family we didn't really know anything about, and the fact that Daryl was pretty quiet about Merle's disappearance this week earlier and gave our thoughts on that, especially since Rick left a note from Morgan while Merle is left with no clues to where the group could have gone, kind of threw me off. Of course, the biggest element is the whole CDC thing. We'll see more of this next week, but obviously this is the biggest change from the comic we've seen so far. I can't really say if I like it or not yet in terms of how it gels with the rest of the series. I'm going to wait and see on that, but I did like the sequence itself and how it was presented. Overall, I give the episode 3.5 busters. A lot of good scenes, but the build-up left me more eager for next week. Finally, I'm really going to try calling the voicemail next week for the final episode of the season. Always happy to share my thoughts with you dudes. Looking forward to the podcast. P.S. Did Buster steal Rick's hack this week? I know it was hot outside, but Glenn saved that thing for him. So thank you, Aaron.
He was wearing it in the last shot, wasn't he? When they go to the CDC?
I don't know. Not that I recall.
I'm looking at a screen cap right now. Granted, it's from next week's episode, but it looks to me like seconds after the episode ended, the last episode ended, and he's definitely wearing a hat. So maybe he wasn't wearing it on camp, but it didn't disappear.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we have some voicemails to play, and we have a bunch of them, and I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. We really enjoy the voicemails. We just need to be conscious of the time. I edited a couple of them down to just make them easier to get to. So without further ado, here is our first.
Hey guys, this is Tyler Crone, long-time listener to the HHWLOD network, first-time caller, calling in for the Walking Dead show. Just got done watching the show, and wow, this last episode, the most recent episode, I don't know what it was called. It blew my mind. It definitely might be the best episode of the show so far, including the pilot. Especially when after that commercial break, when we came back and the guy inside of the CDC, that kind of threw us all off guard because it was such a complete change in tone from the rest of the episode. And of course, my roommate and I are sitting there was like, what the heck's going on? This was not in the comics. When we saw them leaving the camp so early, again, it was kind of a shock. So I'm interested to see where the show is going, how they're going to end the season, if they're going to end it in the same way that we thought they were, the last issue 6 or the last episode, the last part of the first trade. If that's going to happen, I almost thought it was going to happen this episode, but it ended up not happening. I mean, this is a total roller coaster. I have no idea where they're going with this. Again, I'm a huge fan of the entire network that you guys have going on. I keep up the good work, guys. I look forward to your show every week. It's a must listen, and considering how busy my schedule is, that is a major compliment. I hope you guys keep up the good work, and I can't wait to see what your opinions were on the show. See ya.
All right, thanks for that. We appreciate all of the kind words. What do you guys think about them leaving the camp so soon? We didn't really touch on that. I mean, I think at this point the trades are out the window. I mean, I think they're going to go back and use certain storylines, but chronologically, I just don't think you can put them side by side anymore.
Yeah, no, you totally can't. In the book, it starts snowing about the time that some of the events that happened in this, or even in last week's episode, happened. In the book, it's snowing. So I think you're right, John. I think it's really pretty much diverged and has become its own thing that it stands alone on, like that one guy said. And when it goes back in the path that Frank Darabont mentioned, it's just going to feel familiar. Like, oh yeah, I remember this from the books. But I think at that point it's going to be so totally its own entity that it's really not going to matter anymore.
I'm fine with it. I think, to be honest with you, they stayed in that area a little too long in the book. So I think I always thought it'd be more human nature to want to try and keep moving when you could to try and find either more people or more resources or whatever. So to me, it's totally fine.
Okay, I'm going to get to another one that's a little bit on the longer side, but a very good voicemail. So I want to do that, and then maybe we'll hit a couple short ones back to back. Here we go.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's Loki Beat on Twitter. Big fan of the show. Discovered the comics as a result of the series and about 4 volumes into the comic books. And I have to say that the show last night just totally deviated into an alternate universe from a Walking Dead fan perspective. And I think you can really say right now that they are just need to be evaluated and considered different entertainment vehicles. I like the comic books. I've emailed you guys to tell you what I like about it. I just like the apocalyptic world, how people react in the absence of social norms and rules. How do people react? And I think these two alternate visions give a little bit of that. The only concern I have about the show and the episode 5, it's a good word for it, the illuminating moment, I guess, is that, emphasis on cure really kind of takes away one of the big elements of what I think the comic book and the whole storyline is, which is, how do you survive in a world where, the living or the Walking Dead is, what hope you have in an environment like that. And it's a bit depressing, but, that's kind of why we like entertainment, to create these alternate worlds to see how we react. So I'm a little bit disappointed that there's been emphasis on cure in the series. It could go a couple of different ways. Of course, now from a plot twist perspective, you think that they might have to go after Jim for a viable brain sample. I wonder what the ethics are on that one. But it makes for great entertainment, and really, I'm just wondering what the heck we're going to do for 11 months until the next series debuts. They got to debut it earlier than that, I'm hoping. I'm hearing that the ratings are great, so I'm looking forward to a little bit more budget and perhaps 13, 15, 18 episodes next year. I think there's certainly enough fodder in the comic book series that could be some great ideas. Sorry to ramble, but I enjoy the show. I enjoy everything you guys do in support of it and the series. Take care, guys.
So Robert Kirkman had an interview this week with Entertainment Weekly today where he kind of touches on a lot of the same things that Loki was saying. So he says, it occurred to me, if this would happen to real people wouldn't be concerned with why it's happening and how to fix it. They would just be concerned with finding food and surviving from day to day. Well, Frank Darabont said, hey, we're in Atlanta, and the CDC is based in Atlanta, so wouldn't they at least pop by? And I said, huh, because I didn't know where the hell the CDC was stationed. And he goes on a little bit. He says, like I said before, look, we're always going to go back to the path. Frank has always maintained the comic book as a path, but we're not stuck on it. If the story idea comes up, we're going to leave the path for an episode or 2, but we'll always come back to it. I'm sure there are some people out there who say, the CDC, what the heck, this isn't in my comic book, this is no good. And all I would say to those people is, calm down. He then goes on to talk about how this isn't a show like Lost where you're worried about questions and answers. If it's a question they want to answer, they're going to answer it. And if it's not a question they're going to answer, they're going to make it clear that it's not important. So I think that'll be factored in quite a bit in the next episode as we go forward.
Real quick before we move on, do you guys think they're going to linger on finding the cure, as Loki Beat is just nervous about?
No, I think that's what Kirkman was saying just then.
I would
calm down.
I would give it this upcoming episode and maybe a mention in the season 2 premiere, but I think that's going to be kind of the whole point, is to squelch the entire idea of finding a cure and just make it as we can't do it, there is none, or this was the last place that ever could find a cure and it's gone, or something like that.
What I love is that I'm familiar enough with the books that I'm watching the show and I'm seeing, okay, well, that is from the text, that's from the text, but it keeps me guessing about all the things that aren't, and it makes it that much more fun for me to watch. I think we'd all really be bored if we're watching panel by panel recreation of issue by issue of Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead. I think that we get the best of both worlds this time. This way, we get the references to the graphic novel plus the storylines that take place on their own.
I'm going to do 2 quick ones back to back.
Hi, my name is Jerry. I'm calling from Michigan. Just want to call about the latest episode of The Walking Dead. But before I say that, I just want to let you know I started watching the show and then got into the comic after. Let me tell you, I love the comic. I basically went out and bought all of them. I just actually picked back number 13, but yeah, I've read each of them and I'm reading through them again because it's that good. So with having said that, watched the latest episode of The Walking Dead, episode number 5. Setting from Wildfire, I don't remember. But I liked it up until the point that they got to the CDC. That just didn't really seem to fit with everything. Obviously I'll give it a chance and see where they go with it, see what they have up their sleeve. But it just seemed like they were kind of getting into the, little sciencey there with trying to figure out the cure and all that stuff. Or maybe they're trying to, I don't know what they're doing, but I'm just curious what everyone thinks about that part. So I love the podcast and look forward to the new episode. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is from Wisconsin. Just want to give my thoughts on episode 5 real quick before we record. So I want to say, first of all, I wish that they would have sped up the episode a little bit. I was a little slow. I guess I got kind of used to that for episode 4, but I was hoping for a little bigger ending. And also, too, I wish they would describe a little bit more of when they got to the CDC, why did they pick up, like, M16s, why did they look around, see what was all laying on the ground. All of a sudden, it got dark very quickly. I don't know what was up with that. And then the other thing I liked in the episode was the tension. In the camp, it seemed a little higher up there. People starting to disagree and not, all happy and stuff like that. And just really nervous and things were going. I think that's pretty much about myself I want to add. And I hope to see the podcast tomorrow and we'll get a good report. All right, later.
What do you guys think about that? About they're worried about running out of ammo and everything, and they kind of left all those dead military bodies and their guns alone when they got to the CDC. They could have probably picked up some stuff there.
Yeah, I think initially they're just worried about getting into shelter right away.
Before dark. I mean, that was the big thing about that scene. It was getting darker outside, and they knew they wouldn't be able to defend themselves at night. Yeah,
and I think they realized too that the sound of gunfire is just going to attract more and more of them, and without having a place to hide to, firing off a bunch of guns are probably going to just attract more, especially in a urban area, as opposed to out in the middle of nowhere.
All right, well, thanks everybody for those voicemails. We appreciate them. There's probably 1 or 2 that we're not going to be able to get to right now, but maybe we'll open next show with them like we did today. So I'd like to go right to Brad now, who can talk about our big Twitter contest and announce the winner.
So I guess got to hand it to the listeners who participated in this Twitter contest for 12 Walking Dead trades. I had some great response to this. And for those of you that don't know, maybe you're listening to the show for the first time. Last episode, we announced a Twitter contest for those of us that follow our Twitter feed. On Black Friday, we were going to announce a way to enter the contest to where you could win the first 12 Walking Dead trades. They're my trades, and I wanted to give them away as a contest. So those who were paying attention saw a link to a video that I made, and in that video, it told you what to do to enter the contest, which was tell me what you think the zombie outbreak was caused by. And we got about 24 or 25 entries, and there were some really, really good ones. And I can imagine. First off, I couldn't write my way out of a paper sack, so I would have a really hard time entering this contest, trying to come up with some reason for this to happen or some story or whatever. But we had some great participation. We had a couple of people literally write short stories We had one guy actually made a video, and he sent us a link to the video with his explanation for what happened. But I made a list of all the causes that people came up with. A lot of them were similar. Some of them were actually the very same. We had a lot of good entries, obviously, so I'm just going to read a few here. I wrote them all down, but I'm just going to read a couple here that are really kind of cool. We had a riff on the umbrella T virus thing. We had a contaminated flu vaccine theory. Justin Bieber actually caused it in one guy's entry, along with George Bush. Obviously, we know what side of the fence he's on. And then somebody actually based it in reality. There's an actual parasite that I'm going to mispronounce it. It's called Toxoplasma gondii, and he had a wiki reference to that. So he based his theory in reality. Somebody said there was a series of vaccines that the government forced on the population a while back that kind of mutated into this. Actually, two people say the outbreak was caused by a mutated H1N1 flu virus, and we actually had two people blame it on energy drinks. One was a real energy drink called Four Locos. I don't know if you guys have heard about this energy drink.
Yes.
Yeah, it's made some headlines here in Texas. It's a alcoholic energy drink full of caffeine, and it's
Red Bull and vodka or whatever.
Yeah, it's actually been taken off the market now. And then also another energy drink called Buster's Revenge was the cause of one of them. Vampires was another cause. Vampire plus vampire equals zombie. He said vampires are all the rage, so why can't we blame it on them? One of the oddest ones that I got was a short story in which Lori almost kills an old gypsy woman in her car on accident, and I think the gypsy woman kind of cursed somebody or something, and it caused the outbreak. We had a mutated strain of flu that was called the walking flu, which is where the walkers got their name. Thought that was interesting. Somebody wrote a story about an artifact from space that ended up being underground, and two guys discovered it, and it affected them, and they started the outbreak. Human flesh being sold as hamburger meat and pork was one. There's three I wanted to touch on that were, all those were very similar, but these three here were entertaining enough to me and original enough to me that I wanted to single them out. So this guy says the people of The Walking Dead bought and watched too much Blu-ray and HD TV. They sat at home, never leaving the comfort of their couches. Over the time, they began to change. Since they wouldn't leave the house, delivered food was the norm. So many people bought pizza that there was no more bacon or sausage. Oh, and some deranged guy murdered his ex-girlfriend since she cheated on him and gave him the gonochlamydia H1 vilius. So he cut her up into pieces and put her on a pizza. It was the right mixture of STD, sauce, dough, and extra cheese that created the craving for human flesh. Remember, always wear a condom when you cheat on your significant other.
Ouch.
Yeah. This was another one that made me laugh. The zombie apocalypse started when the Dharma Initiative made an agreement with the Black Smoke Monster. The agreement stated that if the Smoke Monster protected the Initiative's people from the hostiles, in exchange, the Initiative helped the Smoke Monster get off the island. Once off the island, the monster started to kill as many people as possible. Jacob tried to revive these people but failed and turned them into zombies. Can't get away from Lost. It always goes back to Lost.
Boom.
Now, again, I want to say thank you to everybody who participated. It was really, really cool seeing all the different ideas. But I'm going to give the winner to Soda on the forum, Joe Jans. Let me just read his verbatim. It's a well-known fact that there is a secret society of the 5 wealthiest people in the world known as the Pentaveret, who run everything in the world, including the newspaper. And meet triannually at a secret country mansion in Colorado known as the Meadows. The Pentaveret is made up of the Queen, the Vatican, the Getz, or Gettys, Gettes, maybe that's something I'm supposed to know, but don't, the Rothschilds, and Colonel Sanders. The Pentaveret decided...
What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken?
The Pentaveret decided to ostracize Colonel Sanders due to sales and lack of creative marketing campaigns. In a fit of rage, the Colonel reversed the order of the 11 herbs and spices in his next batch of chicken. Now, as everyone knows, when these 11 herbs and spices are added in the correct order, they create the most potent, addictive force known to man. But when the order is reversed, they become evil. Evil, I says. It only took one bucket of original recipe to start the zombie holocaust. That's why everyone hates Colonel Sanders. So I'm going to give it to Soda because his made me laugh. It was a really hard decision. I thought, I need to pick something that's not silly and one of these actual medical things. It needs to be the winner. But like I said, there were my 12 trades, my contest. I'm going to give the trades to Joe Jans, Soda on the forum. I want to thank everybody for participating. And those of you who are angry because I didn't give you the prize, you can send me an email and tell me how much I suck. But again, my contest, my prize. I want to thank everybody for participating.
And thank you for offering those 12 trades and for the awesome video clip that launched the contest. That was fantastic.
I had fun making that. That was pretty fun.
And I guess as we close up here, don't fret, listeners. Like we mentioned early on, we're going to have a lot more opportunities for people to win prizes, trades, both I think hardcover and softcover. So if you didn't win this time, don't get discouraged. We'll try and come up with some creative contests, hopefully as creative as Brad made up last week for you to win. So just hold tight with us. And I guess
I was going to say I actually feel kind of bad that I had to pick one person to win because everybody obviously put a lot of thought into this.
And thanks for the big turnout.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's for a short time frame contest like that. That's a lot of entries, and we really appreciate everybody's participation. Not only with the contest, but with the voicemails, with the emails, with the tweets, the iTunes reviews, all that stuff. I mean, the show that it does our hearts good to know that that many people are listening, and that the numbers for the show keep a steady incline as they do for the TV show. So again, thanks to all. All right, so that does it for this week's episode number 5, Wildfire. As always, you can leave us a voicemail at 516-468-7912. You can send us an email at comments@walkingdeadtv.com. Join in on the discussion at forumforgeeks.com. That's forumforgeeks.com, where we have forums for our show, our other podcasts, Half Hour Wasted and Legion of Dudes, as well as other podcasts that are a part of the Forum for Geeks network, as well as the Walking Dead podcast network, where you'll find a whole cornucopia of Walking Dead related podcasts for the TV show, the comic, both, all that good stuff going on.
That's right, Russ. There's a ton of great content there, including Walking Dead Cast just had some interviews with Kirkman, Jeffrey DeMunn, Stephen Yun, and Chandler Riggs. There's a ton of stuff there from all the shows, so check that out. If you like our show, you're probably going to like them too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you look around, if you're into the show and into the podcast, each show I think offers up something a little different. So there's a lot of love to go around. And speaking of one of our fellow forum members on there, our very own Jim Dietz was lucky enough to be on the Two True Freaks podcast to talk about The Walking Dead.
That's right, and there are November podcasts of the month on Forum for Geeks. Peter was nice enough to have me on along with Chris Johnson, also a member of the forums, and Drake, and it was pretty cool because here on the Walking Dead TV podcast, we keep it spoiler-free for the comics, and on Two True Freaks, it was totally spoiler alert on. So we were able to talk about a lot of spoilers for the comic coming up. So if you are familiar with the comic and you want to hear what I have to say that I can't say on this podcast, check out that one, and they were very happy to have me on. The podcast of the month for November on forumforgeeks.com, which you should definitely check out because that is where geeks meet on the internet.
Awesome. So now I will, as always, give it to Mr. Jordan for the final word of the show. So if you don't want to be spoiled with the previews for next week and what's going on with episode 6 finale, then I bid you good day.
Thanks, Russ. So until there's no more room in hell and the dead walk the earth, remember, look, just because I was born in 1987 doesn't mean I haven't seen film classics. I mean, come on, I'm not Amish. And for episode 6, TS-19, Rick and the group are allowed into the CDC by a strange doctor, but all is not what it seems in their newfound haven. See you next week, folks.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.